What's going on, guys? It's early in the morning. Just getting some work done, but I wanted to pump this video out. I tried to upload a video a couple days ago, but for some reason it didn't upload. I'm hoping to get a couple out to you today. YouTube's giving me issues, so we're going to see what happens. But this is a message of dire importance. I kind of want to talk to you about the most challenging and difficult thing or point in my life, I guess, and kind of how I got through it. So this video is not to be self-loathing and to come like a victim, so don't be sending me apologies or things like that. I got through it, I'm fine. But I kind of want to spread this message because there are some of you that are probably going through some hardship, or you certainly will in the near future or distant future. And so here's kind of a little background to what happened with me and how I got through it, and I hope that it can help somebody. At least one person. If this message kind of hits home or provides some guidance, then I did my job. So it all started like a year and a half ago, around my ex-girlfriend. So she graduated a year before me in school. We met in college, and then we basically spent my entire senior year traveling 4 hours because she was on Long Island. I was in upstate New York finishing school. So we would spend our weekends together. One of us would drive either way. And because of that, my social life kind of began to dwindle because I wasn't really spending as much time with friends, and I was spending all my time studying because my main goal was to get really good grades and go to grad school down on Long Island. And I needed to get good grades because the schools that I was applying to were very competitive and difficult, so I had to get good grades. So fall semester, I literally probably had 30 sleepless nights, all-nighters, cracked out on caffeine and Adderall and whatever else to get through it, and I got the best grades that I ever had in my life, and it paid dividends, and it was totally worth it. Then the following semester, my senior year semester, is when I was about to apply to grad school, so I really had to capitalize on my grades. So I probably had 50 nights where I didn't sleep, and I was just constantly studying or spending time with her. Wasn't really hanging out with friends too much. I was always in the library or locked in my room, headphones on, working. And on top of my schoolwork, which I was taking 18 credits, which is a lot. That's basically the max you could take. I was doing that. I was working also. I was working part-time, an hour and 20 minutes away from where I went to school. I was still working where I did back home at the vitamin shop. And I had to also study for the GRE exam. So it's an entrance exam for grad school. It's a graduate records exam. Very, very difficult. It's like a juiced out SAT. It's a 4-hour exam, brutal, $200 a piece. And I was just studying constantly for that, and it was very difficult. And over the course of several months, I put in 120 hours. 120 hours of studying for it. And I still have a journal. Basically, I documented the date, what subjects I studied, the duration that I studied for, all the practice exams that I took periodically, the scores that I got, so I could kind of track my progress. I had like all the formulas that I needed for the math sections, Greek and Latin roots, top vocabulary words. It was insane. It was intense and insane. And I put in work, and I had to take it 3 times, so that's over $630 for this exam. And mind you, I wasn't working a lot, so I didn't really have a bunch of expendable income, but I used it for this exam. And eventually I got accepted into all 3 graduate schools, all on Long Island, because I wanted to be with my girlfriend. I committed to the school that I ended up going to, which I'm surprised I got into. It was very, very competitive, and I busted my ass, and eventually I graduated, and I committed to the school. Shortly thereafter, about 2 weeks after, my girlfriend broke up with me, and it was essentially over suspicion that I was cheating, and I wasn't cheating. I didn't cheat on her once, but I don't blame her in the sense of all the evidence was there to support that I was cheating. It supported the cheating narrative, but I didn't do it. And so the funny thing about it was she dumped me on Greek Easter at her aunt's house in front of all of her family. Like, she stormed out, and I had to try to calm her down, which didn't work. And all her family witnessed it, and it was embarrassing. And I had to leave and didn't say goodbye to anybody, and that was the end of that. And I knew basically at that point that it was over officially, because we'd broken up a couple of times, but it was never, we knew that it wasn't the end of it, but this time it was the end of it. And she was very vindictive surrounding it and would do a lot of things to try to piss me off and make me jealous afterward, which frustrated me, and it worked. But yeah, it was hard, and it was just after I committed. So I committed to the school that I went to, and it sucked, but, I had my friends there in school to help me get through it. Luckily, keep my mind off things, take me out of the house, take me out of the suite, rather, and, just be reckless and stupid. And I was also spending a lot of time studying because I was finishing out the semester. I graduated. Most people have a hard time finding a job right out of college, but I got a job within a month on Long Island, perfectly enough, right by where she works, oddly enough, also. And that wasn't even on purpose either. So I took the job even though I didn't have a place to stay. So I put in my 2-week notice. I said, fuck it, I'm moving. So I moved, and eventually I found a place. Within a couple weeks, signed the lease, and I was good to go. And basically, a couple days after I got down here, we hung out again. We'd been talking here and there, but, no talks of getting back together. She didn't want to be with me. And we started hanging out again, and it was getting more serious. We started going on dates again, which was cool. We started hooking up again and stuff, and we would go to this place that was like right on the water where I lived, and it was like a cheese and wine place. It was really cool. That became like our date spot. It was really cool. And eventually I gave her an ultimatum after a few weeks, and I was like, listen, we either have to be together or I have to block you, because this back and forth thing, like you're hot and cold, on and off, I can't do it. It's affecting my mental health. And this was where I started to make my mistake. I provided an ultimatum, and she provided an alternative, and I accepted. And if you ever take any of my advice, the ultimate position of negotiation is being able to walk away and mean it. And I didn't do that. Because think about it. If you provide an ultimatum, or you're negotiating, and you give in, not only does that make you seem weak, but it earns a lack of trust, because you're not a man of your word. And I wish I knew this now. I wish I knew this back then, what I know now, because that was the beginning of the end for me. And, we agreed to be exclusive friends with benefits, working toward a relationship, which I should have been okay with, but I wasn't. Instead, I was pushy, and I pushed her away, and it hurt really, really bad. And that was like the most pain at that point that I had ever felt. I felt rejected. I was in a place where I had no friends. I had no family. Because again, I had moved out of my parents' house at 22. Moved here with just my car full of belongings, just some clothes and random shit, and began my empire. But I had nobody here. Nobody to talk to. And yeah, you could text friends or FaceTime friends, but it's not the same as having physical, like just needing a hug. I had nobody I could hug, and my mom was there to listen to me and stuff, but it was just, my mom wasn't there, but she was like listening and receptive to me and giving me her condolences, but it wasn't the same. And it was really hard, and I started drinking. I essentially became an alcoholic. I would go to the gym, I would come home, and I would just start drinking. And I would like sit there in my room, and I could just picture my ex-girlfriend on my bed, sitting all happy. I could picture the sound of her voice, the noises she would make, or like her laugh. And it was just really, really depressing, and I couldn't get her out of my head. Every song reminded me of her. And I began to just I allowed the depression to engulf me, and I got overwhelmed with it, and it just came bearing on me. And I would write. That was one way of escaping, was writing out how I felt and the emotions that I felt and what I wish I could say and what I wanted to say. And it really helped. And I still have some of those notes to this day, both on my phone and also like paper copies. I'm pretty sure I still have them. I know I've ripped most of them up and burned them along with like all our pictures, which was a big step for me. But it hurt, and it was really, really tough. And then we got into this on and off stage where she would call me when she wanted to like hook up, and then I would try to like keep my feelings out of it, but I couldn't. I wasn't strong enough mentally. And so it was this weird dynamic where I was aware of what would happen, but I had a form of cognitive dissonance where I didn't want to believe it. Similar to, think of a smoker. This is a perfect example of cognitive dissonance. You know that smoking's bad for you, and you know that it could cause cancer, but you try to justify your actions by essentially anomalies, or, you think like, oh, I don't smoke that much. I only smoke like 3 cigs a day, but really you smoke a pack a day. And then you're like, okay, maybe I smoke a pack a day, but there's always people that smoke more that don't get cancer. So, I'm really okay. That's cognitive dissonance. So that's essentially what I was doing, is I had this false perception, I guess, that I was mentally strong enough to keep my emotions out, but I really wasn't. And so, that kind of, it wore on me. And then, was starting a new job. And then eventually I moved to my house for the year to start the school year. And it was a house shared with like 7 people. It was like 2 floors, and I was paying over $900 a month for a fucking room in a house with that many people. Granted, utilities were included, but Long Island's really, really expensive. You can't find a place that's less than like $1,400 to live on your own. A standard apartment complex for a 1-bedroom apartment's like $2,000 a month, which is a lot. So, the house share sucked. People I lived with were messy, didn't clean up after themselves in the bathroom, left dishes in the sink, wouldn't take the garbages out, were loud, slamming the doors. That was the first room when you enter the house. So every time the door opened and closed, I would hear it, and it would wake me up. It was tough. And I started school, which it was an accelerated master's program. It was tough. So this whole time I'm going through this heartbreak. Again, we start going on and off again. And I was always submissive to her, which is strange because I'm not a submissive type. I've been called an alpha male, which I appreciate that, but I'm just very assertive, and I speak my mind regardless. I don't care. If I think you're wrong, I'm going to call you on it, no matter who you are. Like, people have a certain level of respect for, like, I respect authority in terms of, like, my elders and, like, police and things like that, but, like, I talk to, like, my bosses, like, higher ups in the company, which I work for, like, a multi-billion-dollar company. I talk to, like, the higher-ups as if they're just a regular person. I'm just like, hey, man, what's going on? Like, what are you up to today? Oh, not too much. How's it going? I'm like, another day in paradise, Like, that's not how you should talk. You should be more professional. But I level with everybody. Or if I have a problem, I just confront it. And that's just how I am. But with her, when she would argue, she was very vindictive. And she would try to demoralize me and demean my character. And the way I argue is, let's talk about the issue. Let's get to the point. I'm going to tell you why I feel the way I do and the reasons that I think the way I do. And then we can have a discussion. But she would constantly turn the argument around on me and then talk about how I'm insufficient. And there was one time where over the summer, I just said, fuck it. Because it got to the point where it was like really bad and I was really getting hurt. So I said, you know what, I'm going to go out with a bang. I was like, you want to talk about all this shit about me? I'm going to go in on you. And so I did. And I got blocked. For the first time ever, I got blocked. And, I was blocked for months, and I texted her a few times, and the messages disappeared into the ether, and she never got them. Until one day, she texted me, she unblocked me, and she wanted to hook up. She was drunk. And that was the beginning of my unblockedness to where I am today. And so, we ended up hanging out, and it was great. But I remember I was in Walmart picking up groceries and supplies for my house and whatnot, like school supplies and shit. And she texted me, like, out of the blue, because I didn't expect to see her name because I was blocked. And she was like, hey, are you up? And I was like, dude, it's 8 o'clock. Of course I'm up. She was drunk. And she was like, I want to see you. I miss you, blah, blah, blah. Can I see you? Whatever. I was just like, oh, I thought you didn't want to see me again, blah, blah, blah. So, whatever. So, school semester starts in August, September, and it's challenging. I'm still working full-time, and I start the program. I'm taking a full course load. It's an accelerated master's program, so it's really in-depth. I got to do 3 to 6 credits of research, which is like 15 hours a week. I have to find a research PI, which is essentially one of the instructors who coordinates research with you. You got to create an experimental design, a thesis for your master's program, and then test it out, figure out how you're going to do it, whatever problem you're trying to solve. And so I did, but 3 weeks into the semester, she's like, oh, like with your work schedule, we can't make this work, so you're going to have to find somebody else who's got to take on another student. So now I'm 3 weeks in, 0 research progress, and now I got to find a new professor. I'm pissed. And also, I wasn't even on the email list for the program, so I wasn't getting announcements and messages that everybody else was getting. So immediately, right from the get-go, I was kind of way behind everybody. I eventually find a new instructor after 2 weeks. So now I'm 5 weeks or so behind. And there's no way I'm going to make up this research time. That's like 15 to 20 hours times 5 weeks. It's like 100 hours of research that I got to make up. And I'm still working, and I'm still going to the gym. I'm still going to classes, still trying to study. It's a lot to take on at once. And so I realized slowly that I wasn't going to be able to do it. So conveniently enough, at this point, my car essentially breaks down. I got 2 tickets for my inspection and my exhaust because I had a hole in the exhaust, so it was really loud, and I got pulled over at like midnight. But it's funny because I didn't get it inspected because I knew I had to get a new exhaust because the muffler was fucked up. So I was just going to buy a new car. And the next day, because I had called that day and set up an appointment to look at a new car the following day, and that was the night that I got pulled over. Of course, the policeman isn't going to buy that story. He wrote me 2 tickets, which cost me $400, which, mind you, I have a lot of expenses going on, so that $400 is a pain in the ass and not something that I really want to pay. Come to find out, I end up buying the new car, which is now an added expense because now my insurance, I got to pay for that. And then with the new payments, that's an additional, a few $100s that I got to pay. So just an added expense. So I'm still working. And I realize now with those 2 factors, with the research and with the car payment and everything, I'm not going to be able to continue going to school. So I decided instead of withdrawing, I'm just going to take Fs for all my classes and push my student loans back so that way I don't have to pay for them. Because basically, after the semester, you wait 6 months and then you have to start paying on them. So I was just like, okay, I'm going to push them back. I'm not going to withdraw officially. Little did I know that there is some fine print in the agreement, and I was never notified of this after the fact, or even before fact, that if you stop going to classes, the school refunds the money to the federal student loans, and now you're responsible for that money that they sent. So they're like, okay, so we sent $5,000 back to the student loan, so now you're responsible for that. And I didn't have $5,000 because obviously if I did, I wouldn't have taken out the loans in the first place. So now they're like, you have 30 days before we send a collections agency after you, and you got to pay 20% on top of what you owe. So it'd be $5,000 plus 20%, which would be an additional $1,000, I believe. Yeah, additional $1,000. So $6,000 I got to come up with. And I'm like, fuck, I do not have this money. I got to figure it out. So I'm looking for like quick, small private loans. And they're all like, I have good credit. But because my student loan debt is so high, they're like, dude, we can't give you a good offer. So all the things that I found online were essentially like 24% APR,